But okay, and recording is in progress. Hello, everyone watching the recording. We're about to start. Oh, the attendees are coming in. Well, hello, everyone. Hi. Take a digital seat, everyone.
What if I have a standing desk? Then what do I do in that case?
Yeah, press button.
Also, yeah, there you go. I didn't say it was motorized.
You're standing up, but you've also
Give
got
me
a
a
digital
second.
seat. It's like you've got both. Welcome aboard, everyone, says Gray in the chat. Lovely. Okay, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and then we'll go like plus 1 minute. Our camera and audio.
Ollie, we're all seeing you. Are you meant to? No, I'm just kidding. We're not. You're off. You're safe.
Yeah, this should be webinar format. You should not be visible nor audible.
Enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Okay, gotcha.
Kuba, we got to work on like a countdown timer till we're going live or something, so people know when we're rocking and rolling.
I don't know where to click for that timer. Do you?
No. I don't think it exists. I think you have to have it. This is like prep work. You have to do the homework.
You two need to do like a live pre-webinar jam session together, and then other non-musicians like me could listen to the two of you guys on your guitar, on your bass, doing your thing. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's good. No, we'll be starting in just a moment. Here, everybody, make yourselves comfortable, and we'll be starting.
Could I throw out there? I know we've got a couple dozen people on here so far. Who's already using? Who is anybody not using HubSpot and ClickUp? And if folks are already on HubSpot and ClickUp, does anyone have anything through the integration run live right now? I'm seeing some folks who've been on ClickUp a good amount. Liv, welcome aboard. Lisa, running on ClickUp. Some folks who I don't know who are running on ClickUp. Jeff, I know you're running on ClickUp. Eduardo, I know you're moving there. Ed. Perfect. Cool.
Natasha is saying have both, but not integrated, unfortunately. Well, you've come to the right place. This is perfect. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm seeing haven't run anything live due to feedback about the integration being broken. Our lives are in ClickUp and HubSpot, but not fully integrated yet. This is perfect. All right. I think a minute has passed. Let's just jump right into it. Let's get things started here. So once again, hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on integrating ClickUp and HubSpot to improve client services. We're ZenPilot. We're here to help you fix chaotic agency operations once and for all. And today we're going to be looking at a piece of that, an important piece of it. If you're using or considering using ClickUp with HubSpot, how do you make project management and project management in ClickUp and everything else ClickUp can do talk well and work well with CRM, marketing, automation, and all the other capabilities in HubSpot? How do you make those work well together? How do you make sure that the data is well represented in both platforms? How do you make use of the right automations here? We'll be talking about this and more during this webinar. Ground rules. All right, maybe interactions first, and I'll go into ground rules in a second. Joining me on the call are ZenPilot's illustrious co-founders, Andrew Dimsky and Gray McKenzie. Say hi, guys. How you feeling today?
Feeling primed, excited to be here. Good to talk about two of our favorite tools.
I'm super excited. Can you guys hear the chaos that's happening behind me right now? Yeah, you're getting.
I can hear it. That's great.
So this is going on live. Let's do this.
Gray's ready to do work. He's inspired right now. There's chainsaws outside.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds intense. For myself, I'm Kuba. I'm the content marketing manager here at ZenPilot, and I'll be helping lead this discussion, answering your questions in the chat, highlighting stuff in the Q&A. Some of you may have submitted questions ahead of the webinar. We've got quite a few, so not all of them might get answered, but we did get them, and we'll try to address them as we move forward. Alrighty, so before we jump into more here, I wanted to in the chat to learn a little bit more about you, about your situation. Please leave us some messages about your current situation. I'm seeing some of you already doing that either way, but tell us about your situation, kind of the problems you're facing, everyday situations that have led you here, the problem you want to solve by attending this webinar. The more you can tell us about that, kind of the more specific you can be, the more likely it is we'll talk to your specific use case here, and also drop in where you're tuning in from, just so we have that extra bit of info, and we can refer to that in fun ways, hopefully. Alrighty. Okay, I think at this point, let's do a little bit of a background. I did mention, our ClickUp background is probably part of why a lot of you are here, but I wanted to take a moment to also talk about our HubSpot background. Greg, can you talk briefly about like ZenPilot plus HubSpot, the two of you plus HubSpot, like what's the story behind that?
Yeah, for sure. One of those two obnoxious, Andrew can take over. We've lived pretty much the same life here for the last 15 years or whatever. So we were on HubSpot's first 300 partners way back in 2011, 2012. Joined the HubSpot partner program, did a ton of, inbound projects, and what did a typical inbound agency look like, plus a lot of web stuff early on. And then a whole bunch of platforms integrated with HubSpot. So we've run here at ZenPilot, and what was formerly Do Inbound. Our HubSpot account is now in year 11. So we've been hardcore HubSpot users for over a decade. And then obviously we're on, and anytime someone wants to challenge me, I'm still waiting to meet someone who's got an earlier ClickUp workspace ID than we've got. So if anyone's got a number below, if anyone's got a 5-digit number, then you're doing awesome. And if you're on the lower half of that scale, then you're gonna be pretty close to us. So we've been in the ClickUp ecosystem for quite a while, and have done a ton of, and Andrew will talk to this more, a ton of custom integrations between the two. The native integration is an awesome rollout, and I think a really good move for both teams. But anyways, we worked with hundreds of HubSpot partners. There's a deep love and affinity for both HubSpot and ClickUp, and think they're respectively the best tools in the CRM and the PM space today.
Yeah, I love it. And with regards to our background with ClickUp, one fact that's fun to mention for me is that not only are we ClickUp's largest and highest rated solutions partner, we were also the first one. So in case you were wondering about, it's not just the workspace ID. Let's say it like that. All right, Andrew, did you have more to add? In terms of our background, or how we usually talk about ZenPilot before we launch into the rest of this?
Just to emphasize that we focus on serving the agency use case. We've come from that space ourselves. We're deeply ingrained in these tools. So we've just got that blessing of seeing a lot of different configurations and having the opportunity to kind of play in this playground for a very long time. And so that's hopefully some insight that we can share with you guys today. Some stuff that we've seen, help you guys avoid some roadblocks, and also give you maybe some ideas to implement today right after this call, so that you can increase some sensation in how you're running your agency. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to think about these tools. We want these tools to support our workflow, to support our business, to free us up to accomplish an objective. So if we can do some work up front to lay out our systems in a smooth and efficient way, then they work for us instead of the other way around. That's what we really want to help agencies do, is think about why they're setting tools up the way that they are, and make sure that they serve them and their desires as a team.
Lovely. Awesome. Thank you. So we're about to start delivering the goods here and telling you all about what's possible in this integration space between ClickUp and HubSpot. If I could ask you, dear watchers, you're leaving us a lot of background that could also be kind of phrased as a question for Gray and Andrew to address in the chat. So please use the Q&A functionality if you want something like directly answered, and we'll try to leave a healthy amount of time for Q&A and addressing these questions. So please use the Q&A functionality. That is where we will be looking first and checking the chat only second. And I imagine the Q&A will fill up quite quickly here. So go ahead and drop your questions and cases there now. And with that said, I'll be in the chat, answering your questions. I am probably going to get a question quite soon about this being recorded. It is being recorded, and we're planning to distribute this to attendees. But of course, to get your questions directly answered, your best bet is to stay with us live and ask it live. So we encourage you to do that. With that said, drop us messages in the chat if you have any other technical questions. I'll try to assist, and I'll leave you here with Gray and Andrew and kind of slip into the background here. Have fun, both of you.
Hinge mode activated. All right, can I get some quick feedback, Andrew, from you, from anyone else in the chat? This is my one preface, and I promise we'll dive right into this. I turned on voice isolation mode for the first time in the new Mac OS settings. Is that any better with the chainsaw or no?
Much better. Sounds like you're like a library.
I can't believe that. That's not what I'm hearing, but I'm very, very glad to hear that. we are getting a huge and awesome maple tree that's unfortunately rotting, taken down, and it's pretty much right outside my window at the new place. Well, let's talk about cool. Let's talk HubSpot and ClickUp and how to make these both work together well to improve and streamline your client servicing. So you think about the continuum here, like what's the relationship between CRM and project management? Those two platforms. Different teams are going to have a different place where they want those two tools to overlap. We've had folks who have, and Kuba just did a live piece with an agency called Hop Online that completely eliminated HubSpot from their tech stack, and they went to ClickUp from a CRM perspective. That's the minority of use cases. That's not what most teams are doing. There's things that HubSpot excels at, any of the sequences and the prospecting tools and a lot of like the sales specific tools, HubSpot's purpose built for that. And ClickUp is super flexible and super powerful, which is why we love it so much. But you're building a lot of that stuff into it. And there's just some things that HubSpot's got that you don't have the ability to do. On the flip side, you've got HubSpot projects. And so we've certainly seen folks tackle and grow for a while using HubSpot for kind of this entire thing. They're taking it from prospect through the whole delivery lifecycle inside HubSpot. That gets really hard when you're inside, projects in HubSpot is a pretty limited PM tool. And then it's really hard once you're jumping from HubSpot portal to HubSpot portal to HubSpot portal, and it all lives back in one, but you're doing the work in other portals. So you're all here because you're already familiar with that. Hey, there's a reason to use both of these tools as best-in-class tools for these two purposes. So the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is just figure out where you draw the line between where is the source of truth, HubSpot, where is it ClickUp, and what does that look like? And at ZenPilot, what that looks like, and for most of the teams that we work with, that looks like right here as someone becomes a new client, they're pushed into ClickUp. If you think about an agency having a growth, delivery, and operations function, and if you followed our work for a while, you're familiar with that kind of breakdown of how agencies are structured. Our growth team is going to largely live out of HubSpot. Our delivery team is going to live out of ClickUp. And so that's the handoff point is, hey, we closed a new deal. Now we need to push it to our delivery team to go deliver on the promises that we've made. This is the most common handoff point is someone became a new client. Now that work all gets centralized in ClickUp. But for you, that's super important to figure out where do I want that delineation to be? And, are there any exceptions to that rule? What's the structure of where should this belong? And I would do that first before getting lost in the sauce of the actual integration. But I thought we could start here with just kind of examples. What are the most common things, or what are the best things to do with the ClickUp HubSpot integration? And so nerd out on that a little bit, and then work back from that. I think if this was a classroom setting, what we would do is we'd teach you all the logic first and say, hey, here's how to think about it. Here's how to set it up. And that's just a little bit more boring than actually getting to see examples first. So let's talk about some examples first, and then we'll come back to how should we set this up. All right. So the single most common example, let me flip over here to, we'll go to ClickUp first. Single most common use case is, hey, I just closed a new client. Woohoo, that's great. They moved to close one in HubSpot. Well, now I've got to get all that work distributed to the right people with the right due dates. in ClickUp so that our team gets to work and the client can see value as quickly as possible. So there's got to be some way to make this easier, right? Is like the question that we've all got. And the answer is there is, and there's some recommendations for you about what should be automated and what should be manual. And then there's exceptions to those recommendations. You know, there's some folks and some agencies who should be a lot more automated. And then there's other folks who should not. What I've got here is this agency client health tracker. We'll talk about this, sometimes called active deals or sometimes called the account dashboard. We've used a handful of different names here, and different teams have used some different names for this. And this is basically a representation of all our active accounts happening right now, where they are in the process, client health. We'll talk more about that stuff as we go. And so if you're thinking about how do I get that deal from closed one to create work here and then deploy the work that we've got inside ClickUp, that's going to get triggered out of HubSpot. So the easiest way to think about building this integration is when the trigger's in HubSpot, build your automation in HubSpot as well. When the trigger's from ClickUp, build it out of ClickUp. And then Andrew is going to talk about not using either of those platforms themselves to build the automation, but how do we do it in a third-party platform versus the native integration. So I'm going to take you through just the native integration first. So what that's going to look like then, instead of, because we're saying, hey, we got a new deal, closed one in HubSpot, and you create stuff in ClickUp, that's going to send us over then to HubSpot to go create this. And so we're going to be in the workflows tool, which is where it's going to integrate in. The big gotcha or catch, which I think for most of you today is not a problem, is that for full access to the workflows tool, you probably need to be on a pro level subscription of HubSpot. But at least from a lot of the names that I recognize, a bunch of you are on pro or enterprise anyways. And so you've got access to the integration inside HubSpot. So you're picking some kind of trigger. And the most common one is, hey, there's the deal is in this pipeline and it moved to closed one. And that's where I want to push it to HubSpot. And I only want to enroll it once. And then we'll use something like this where we're creating a task from a template. So we're picking all our values. Here's the workspace. Here's the space that we're going to use, and we set our folder in our list. And then I guess I should have shown this one actually. So the way that you'll do this is go here, available actions. If you haven't yet connected ClickUp, connect ClickUp. Once you have it, search for it. And here's our options: create a folder, space, task, list. These are obviously misordered. Space, folder, list, task is the hierarchy of ClickUp. And then create a task from a template. And you'll most likely want to be able to create a task from a template because there will be some pre-filled values that you can assume that you've got. You may want subtasks tied in there. You may want time estimates, dependencies, all of that kind of built out into a template as you're setting it up. You'll notice, by the way, you can't create a folder or a list from a template using this workflow. And we'll talk about some of the gotchas and the reasons for that and kind of how we want to work around that. So in this case, we're creating that. We're using a template, and then we're just building a simple task. Like, this is the easiest thing that you can go build now. Hey, assign this to your head of delivery or whoever's in charge of getting this deployed. Is that a project manager? Is that a delivery lead? Is that a director of client services? Who's making the decision about who's staffing and resourcing it? And so this is one of the variables that you've got to know is in your sales process, have you already made that decision before a deal gets closed won? That, hey, I already know the team who's going to be doing this, or have you not made that decision yet? If you have, I'd encourage you to consider adding those as some properties inside custom deal properties in HubSpot. And now you can push it and assign stuff directly inside ClickUp. If you haven't, then it's going to go to a shared, a PM, lead PM, or head of delivery, head of client services type role. And so we're assigning a task here to complete the ClickUp setup. We're probably creating another task to add somebody to this account dashboard. And I'll talk about why we use that account dashboard in a second. So you may have multiple different things that you're setting up in ClickUp, obviously Slack, sending welcome emails, triggering tasks to send gifts, whatever else might be a piece of that you could set there. The most common use case here is we're creating two different tasks inside ClickUp. The first one is a task that gets allocated to whoever the lead is for setting up that client work, and it's complete the ClickUp setup. And what that means inside ClickUp then, if I switch over here, is that person is getting a task, probably in a list like client management in the delivery space, and it's go deploy their client folder. The nice thing about if you've got all your stuff templated out, hey, we know when we bring a new client on that we have to do the onboarding process, and we've we've got the most common stuff that we're doing for them. If we've already got that ready to go and we're building and deploying from a template, we get the benefit then, as we're using this template, we get to call it, whoever, Dunder Mifflin Jr. We can remap the due dates. So if we have our due dates already preset, we can say, hey, this client's kicking off on the 23rd, and use the template. And now we can deploy all our work and take advantage of this rescheduling feature, which isn't available. We can't even deploy from a template natively in the integration, but also we can't remap due dates when we do it that way. So you're almost, in most cases, you'll also have some other decisions to make when you deploy that work. Who's getting assigned? Is there anything we're adding? Are there any due dates that need to get shifted here or there? There's some other context we need to add. So I wouldn't be afraid. I think we're just figuring out what jobs can computers do better and should do, and what jobs do humans need to be involved in. And so don't be afraid of that work. Most of the time we overemphasize how much work that is. And we go, oh, it would absolutely kill us if we had to spend 15 minutes setting this up for every new client. And then you say that out loud and you're like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's a $5,000 a month client. We'd be totally fine. And so the real hidden pain behind that most of the time is it's not actually happening. There's not a process for it. Or we're doing it incompletely because there's not, and that's usually tied to the process problem. We're not doing it accurately. And so what we're really looking for is, I want that stuff to be 100% automated so that we quit screwing it up. So I'd encourage you to have a strong process for that and not be afraid of, if you're onboarding $50, $100 a month clients every month, that's totally different. That should be 100% automated. But if you're onboarding $2, $3, $4, $5,000 a month clients or $20,000 projects a month, don't be afraid of some of the manual work that's involved there. But the word manual is a dirty word on this webinar, so that'll be my last time sharing that one. The second thing that we're creating ties into this account dashboard. And if you don't have this living somewhere yet, I'd 100% encourage you to have this. What we want is a way to see all the key properties of any client account. You can think of this as a deal or a contract that you've got signed with a client. What was their goal in that specific engagement? Who's the team? Who sold that? Who's the team? Who's the point person who's responsible for delivering on that? You can get farther and farther and calculate how long someone's been with you if you run a retainer type business, and see kind of what does retention look like across account managers or across strategists. What services they have, what's the health of that account. And then we're able to do cool things with all the different views in ClickUp, like be able to see, when Kevin has a deal, like that goes really well. When Gray has it, it's not as good. When Andrew has it, in this case, it's even worse. Or we could sort it by what service lines do they have, or we could look at, hey, who's in the midst of onboarding, who's active and who's offboarding, or, why when people leave, are they no longer actively working with us? And then we can also tie this back and forth with HubSpot. So if you had to pass a deal property, a client health property, what I would encourage is for all of this to live in one place. I think that's easier if you keep this all in ClickUp. But there's certainly teams who want to be able to see, I want to see client health inside HubSpot. And so you can pass it back and forth as well. But Andrew, fill in anything that I missed. And what would you add here around, like, how can we take this to the next level?
Well, if you could just pop open the sidebar there, I want to hit on the location where that task template fires that you showed in the automation, the client management list. And so if this is your first time seeing this ClickUp hierarchy, Gray mentioned earlier, growth, delivery, operations is like the 3 buckets where effort gets allocated inside of an agency. Well, inside of that delivery bucket, that's a space in ClickUp. We've got a folder for each of our clients. But if a new deal just got won, you're not going to have that folder created yet, because we looked at that automation options. There's no folder from template. And as a process-driven agency, you definitely want to deploy your client work coming from a template like Gray just walked through. So where does that actionable task live? That task that goes to the director of client service or whoever's making the resourcing decisions for the new client. That client management list is a great catch-all spot. And that would be any effort that needs to be associated with a client who does not have a record in another folder. So any like new business stuff would land there. as well as if there's any bulk actions that you guys are doing where the effort touches multiple clients, and like a batch reporting or an all hands meeting about clients. Those are things where, yeah, we're doing delivery work. So from like a utilization perspective, I want my time associated with delivery, but it's not just one client in particular. So the client management list is a good home for both of those things. So as that task comes through automation, you want to make sure you've got a consistent place where it's landing, so that the effort that person puts against that 10, 15, 20 minutes of customization is getting captured, and it's getting captured under delivery work because we're setting up a new client there. So just want to drive that home, Gray, and make sure people knew that about the hierarchy.
That's great. We've got a couple good questions here, and we'll hit most of them at the end. But there's one that Phoebe asked, which is a great question around like, hey, we upsell to current clients, and where do you recommend that should be managed? Since sales teams need to work with delivery teams on that. So I would share, you can also build the flip side. I'm going to jump back here to our client health tracker. And so we could build an automation. You might want it to work the opposite way to keep your delivery team largely inside of ClickUp. And so you use, if no one's familiar with this in ClickUp yet, you've got the automations and you've got all kinds of different use cases. And if you browse and you've got HubSpot configured and installed, you've got some default options in this custom automation. So an example of a custom automation might be, hey, we've got a task that gets created, and you might have some specific, hey, when the service is this, or when the deal owner is that, or depending on properties, you might have some kind of filter. You can remove filters or add as many different filters as you need, and create your automations kind of based on that. Hey, we want to create a deal. We've got the variables we can throw in. So we can throw in, hey, this is client name and the service is CRO, add it to the right pipeline in HubSpot, create the deal stage. We trigger in, a whole bunch of different options around how that gets built out. But that would be the flip side of doing this, is if you wanted your delivery team to manage that directly in ClickUp, but have that push back to your whatever that upsell pipeline in HubSpot is for you, if it's the same one or if it's a different one. You could do that using the values from your task in ClickUp directly. All right, Andrew, do you want to go to kind of taking this same account dashboard type thing and just go deeper on that?
Yeah, I want to hover there for a second, because like this is a process piece of things that if you don't have a 10,000-foot view like a client health tracker, we really recommend that you get that in there for your client services teams, because it's not enough to just monitor your projects. You need to monitor the health of your contracts as well. If you've got specific budgets that you're trying to track for a specific contract, or if you've got links to scopes of work, links to the original deal to get the sales conversations associated with it. It doesn't make sense to mix that stuff up with your to-do list items that come naturally with the work needed to deliver on that contract. So we want to have this space here to track our contracts, and another space to track our actionable work that we're doing. Is that like Grace said, is that a content retainer? Is that a web project? Is that a custom build of some sort? So we keep those two things separate. And so I want to stay here on this client health tracker, and I want to drill into the overlap between ClickUp and HubSpot, and what is the single point of truth. We got a lot of questions about automation live. And I don't think you should have to pick. I think that with the way that the tools can be set up, and we're going to move into a third-party integration here because there's limitations to what ClickUp can do natively. And could you click that automations button again there, Gray, and just pull up that example you had again? And because I thought that this does a really good job of just illustrating the limitations. You see on the left-hand side there, we can put a lot into, or the right-hand side, sorry, what we're pushing into ClickUp. We can push a lot into the task name. We got the deal stage, the pipeline, the amount, and the close date. Doesn't touch a lot of the deal properties that you probably need to keep your CRM clean. We've got a lot of custom fields, which are also properties inside of HubSpot or in ClickUp that we're using to categorize a lot of this information. And so the biggest limitation between the HubSpot to ClickUp native or the ClickUp to HubSpot native is what we can push back and forth on the property side of things. So if you want to bring properties in, and that means we have drop-down values that we want to set, we've got deal IDs or URLs we want to bring back and forth. That's when you're going to look at a third-party tool like make.com to make that happen. And so opening that door, there's lots of different third-party automation tools that you can use. Zapier is one of the most popular out there. The reason that we don't recommend Zapier for this type of work is because of the way that the ClickUp integration is built with Zapier right now. We hope that this changes someday, but for right now, you don't have a lot of visibility into custom field values inside of ClickUp. So I can create a task in ClickUp, but then I want to set some custom field properties on it. So that way it triggers internal ClickUp automations, or it sets up that health dashboard in the right way. So I've got to make sure that I've got a tool that can help make that stuff happen. So what I've got pulled up here, this is an example task. So Gray just had the account dashboard, the client health tracker pulled up. This is just one of the tasks that would live on that list. And what you see here is just a collection of all of the different contact or all the different task custom fields that have been employed here. And so I'm just going to walk through this. It's a little blurry here because it's pretty small, but I'm going to walk through for you guys what we're looking at. So the client name, the contract, that's something that we can quickly and easily pull through, even with the native integration. But as we go down further, you'll see we've got a service custom field. That's our third one down there. So this says CU implementation. That internally, that the ClickUp implementation is one of the services we offer here at ZenPilot. So I want to be able to categorize all the different contracts based on that. That's much better, Gray. Thank you. So we've got, when we set up a custom integration with make.com, we have the option of saying if it's a certain product in HubSpot, then we want to set a custom field value to line up with that inside of ClickUp. And so that way, when this task gets created via automation automatically in our ClickUp CRM, and again, this is primarily where our customer service team looks at things. This is their single point of truth. The ClickUp or the HubSpot CRM is the sales growth team's single point of truth. I can push records into ClickUp from HubSpot, and I can bring a lot of those properties with me, and I can set them as drop-down options or text options here inside of ClickUp. So you see that first one, that ClickUp implementation, that's a drop-down value. We've got all of our services set up as drop-down custom field values in our ClickUp CRM. So that's one of the options we've got set there. The next one is our HubSpot deal ID, just the URL. So if a customer, like a client coach here at ZenPilot, if they have a question about let's say a client brings up something that came up in a sales conversation, with a click, they can go from here into ClickUp from ClickUp into HubSpot, and they can see the full sales conversation record there on the deal. All that context is going to be there. It's all one click away. And no one had to set this up because we used make.com to say, when a deal hits closed won in HubSpot, create a new task in ClickUp and bring all of these HubSpot deal properties and map them to the right ClickUp custom field properties. So that's the biggest distinction between your native setup and your custom setup, is mapping those custom field properties. And it all depends on what you want that or who the audience is. So if our growth team is single point of truth HubSpot and our delivery team is single point of truth ClickUp, we got to have these things talking to each other and set up in that way. So as we go down through here, you see we've got a couple of other custom fields on here. We've got the sales lead, the delivery lead. We've got the status as in onboarding. So we'll set that automatically to onboarding when the deal gets created. We've also got our service agreement link. And so since we've got the HubSpot and PandaDoc integration set up, we've got that PandaDoc link as a HubSpot deal property. So we can grab that and drop it here on the ClickUp task when it's created via make.com. And again, that's kind of the single point of truth for our client services team to say, hey, what gets scoped in this engagement? So when they're getting up to speed on a new deal that's been assigned to them, they're going to come in here, they're going to click on that service agreement link right away and read through the contract. Because I mean, I'm sure we've all been in this position where we start servicing something that wasn't explicitly scoped in the contract, or we have an assumption about what was included. We open up the contract and there was a disconnect there. So our internal process is go to that services agreement, base everything off of that as you're getting your new folder, your new contract list configured. You're building off of that services agreement right there. I don't need to worry about jumping into another tool and searching. If you have one client that has multiple contracts open with you, it can be confusing for your team to know which contract to look at. Since this service agreement was initially tied to that HubSpot deal because of the PandaDoc and HubSpot integration, I know that when this task is created in ClickUp, there's a relationship there. It started in HubSpot CRM, then the Panda Doc was created. Then when that HubSpot CRM deal moved to close one, then a ClickUp task was created, and it brings those things in. So it's all set up right here, ready to go. If I scroll down here a little bit, Gray, you can see a couple of other properties. So we have a client custom field value inside of ClickUp. And that's one that needs to get manually updated. And the reason for that is there's a limitation in ClickUp's API for adding a new drop-down option. So Gray mentioned earlier, there's some stuff you're going to have to embrace manually if you want to have consistent data structure and if you want to have clear eyes on your resourcing. And that's one of them. I just want to call it out here because it's super helpful for you to be able to sort your contracts by client. If you've got multiple contracts running at the same time, and then you also want that to line up with the work that's living inside your delivery space as well. But that's one that's set manually. But the field value above that, the HubSpot deal ID, we always drop that in there as a text field when a new task is created. Again, Make does that. Make will create the task, extract that HubSpot deal ID, place it here on this task. And this is kind of our portal for bi-directional syncing. That if I know that this task is related to that HubSpot ID, I can always search in HubSpot for that deal ID, pull that up. And if anything updates on this task, I can update that deal ID with that. And vice versa, if I'm in HubSpot and I'm trying to push a piece of information to update this existing task, it has a unique HubSpot deal ID. So I just search that and transfer any information over there. So you just need some value on this task that's going to allow it to tell Make to look at to say, okay, this deal equals this task in ClickUp, and it's unique and there's going to be no overlap there. So that's why we pull that one in there. That's less for user experience, and it's more for making the automation flow seamlessly there. So that's just some technical information about what is here and how we use it. At the end of the day, our sales team is going to move a deal to closed one, and that's going to trigger the automation to create for someone on our team to assign the right person to that work. That lives in our client management list that we walked through earlier. And when that person gets assigned the task to go and do that, they can come into the ClickUp CRM space here, see all this information configured. They'll have a few steps that they need to configure manually. But the important thing is they have all the context they need to make those decisions. We don't have to worry about jumping into other tools and then using a human error-ridden search process. We've got it all laid out here, kind of front and center. And how you connect all of your tools is going to look a little bit different for each team. And depending on how you have your ClickUp organized, or you have your proposal tool or your signature tool configured. I walk through what our use case is here and how we flow. And maybe some of you guys have that exact same workflow, and that's great. But if it's similar to that, you just want to remember the principles here. What's the triggering tool? For us, it's HubSpot. When that deal hits close one, that's when we want something to happen inside of ClickUp. For some other people, it might be the other way. When something happens in ClickUp, I want to throw something into HubSpot. But we view HubSpot as our initiating tool, and then we use that HubSpot deal ID as the unique identifier that connects a ClickUp task back to that HubSpot deal. So if we need to make any updates there via automation, we've got that point in common there.
That's awesome. We got some good questions around this, but thanks for walking through that piece, Andrew.
Absolutely.
We've got a bunch of other, we can talk about like using tickets from HubSpot Service Hub, and how does that map, or how do you coordinate with a team inside ClickUp? There's a bunch of other common examples that we can go into. Though what might be most helpful is walk through just the real quick process for figuring this out. I think to some folks, this is going to feel, I think it just feels overwhelming. Like, hey, what does an integration mean or not mean? And other folks are like, no, I'm comfortable with this. So I've got a couple quick steps. Andrew, jump in here wherever, but this is like defining your integration. What should you do? The very first piece you should be aware of. If you've been following us, you hear us talk about this all the time, but like, what are the three key pieces of this? There's definitely the tooling piece. How do we make X tool integrate to Y tool? And what's the purpose of that? The process piece is every bit as important. I was talking with somebody earlier today about, they brought a situation to the table. Like, hey, if we could automate this, this would be awesome. And it was like, hey, we absolutely could, but like, why don't you do it this way instead? Like, why do you even do these 14 things instead of these 3 things? And so there's so much automation that happens of taking a bad process and making it run 20% faster. It's like, congratulations, we made a bad process a little bit more efficient, but it's still not the right process. So understanding what are we actually trying to accomplish, and does that get us to the end outcome that we want? And the third piece is every automation and integration still is touched somewhere by habits. So how do we build the right habits across the team? So we all look at tools. We get so excited when an integration comes out. It makes a ton of strategic sense for ClickUp and HubSpot to partner. And I'm pumped about that partnership as well. But Andrew just walked us through, like, just because there's an integration, two tools have a badge up that says there's an integration doesn't mean what you specifically want or what you specifically need is directly possible with the native integration. So we just need to be cognizant of that and understand what goes into it. So, and that leads directly to the second piece, which is just what's the job to be done that you're hiring for? Define that first. And so the easy thing to do is go jump into ClickUp and start looking at, what are those different options that I could do if I'm browsing for automations here. I want to go see, and then we start with, like, this is the approach that we so often take. Oh, that'd be pretty cool if, like, when a due date arrives and we created a company, it's like, wait, does that make any sense? Is that actually what you want or not? So can we just flip the order of operations here and say, what exactly do I need to have done? And if that's the right process, then that's great. Now we know the job. And then the next step is, what's the ROI of that if we had it automated? And so part of this is time savings. I think that's how we all think about automations and integrations. But I think what I said earlier about accuracy is every bit as important. Like, if a machine's not going to screw it up, and this is error prone when people do it, there's a huge value in that as well. But both platforms, HubSpot's got an excellent API with good documentation. ClickUp has made they've made a ton of strides in terms of the API, and you can access so much through the API. So you can throw something at us. Like I said earlier, hey, it's not possible via the API right now to remap due dates. So if you've got a template, our client onboarding says, hey, they signed the contract this date, then this happens the next date, then this happens the next date, and client onboarding ranges from this date to that date. When you deploy that from a template, which you can do via an API, you just can't do it directly in HubSpot. You can't remap dates. And that's 100% accurate for me to say that, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible to go do. You can do it, and you can use make, and you can go in and you can find all the associated tasks and subtasks, and you can increment them forward by, X amount of, you can calculate the gap basically between the date that you picked as a new user for when you want this to start and backwards. So it's possible, even if that directly, like, all the pieces in all the endpoints that you need to be able to do it are possible. The ROI to go build that, you'd have to run it a good chunk of times to justify the complexity of the build. So we're just gonna be smart about how do we pick the highest ROI opportunities for what we're building, and say, okay, how many times do we run this? What would I save from a person perspective? And then what's it worth to me to have this just happen? And we look at then the cost, and the cost has two different pieces. So we'll talk about that in a second. But that ROI then leads us to, like, the next step in the process is, hey, this would be positive if we, could build it for less than X, or if we could build and maintain it for less than Y a year. And then your build approach is, what do I take natively and use the native integration for? What do I need a custom, like a make.com or a Zapier or another tool like that to run the integration? Or do I actually need to build this directly through the API? And we wind up with something like, super common problem for agencies is, how the heck do I love ClickUp. I love the native time tracking. That's all awesome. Well, how do I get profitability reporting? Or how do I get resource management off of it? Or how do I get insights into, my utilization metrics and my margin metrics? So this is an example of building directly on top of the ClickUp API and tying that into our database of, who are your resources? What are the contracts? What are the rates, the labor rates, and the billable rates that you've got to be able to produce that type of reporting? That's a big enough problem and enough ROI that it makes sense to go build it direct. But you need to decide what's the approach that you'll need in your specific situation. And the last thing that I just point out to everyone is, none of the integrations, automations, whether you do it natively or don't do it natively, none of them are completely maintenance free or hassle free long term. Someone's got to make sure that those are running and that they're accurate and they're triggering on time. And if there's a problem, they've got to be able to fix it. So whether that's working with someone like ZenPilot, or you building it and dedicating resources on your team, or hiring, another company or freelancer or someone to go build it, You just got to have some kind of maintenance expectations built in. And we can talk more about that if that makes sense. But those are the quick tips that I would have to share. Andrew, anything you'd add to that for how we think about kind of identifying and being knowledgeable about scoping out and attacking integrations?
Yeah, two things I wanted to add. When you go through the hiring criteria step, great option is just start with the HubSpot, the ClickUp mind mapping tool, or the whiteboarding tool, and just start with your desired endpoint and then work backwards from there to your start point. And just map that process out of like, just without looking at a tool, what would my ideal flow for how this goes work? And that can just be a helpful way to process through what Gray's talking about there is don't go tool first and use the tool to bring about your ideas, but map your ideal flow first, and then take that and say what is possible in the existing integrations, and then what could be possible if I built something custom, or a no-code tool in the middle. So think about that to map things. And the second one is connected to the ROI analysis. And I wanted to shout this out because I think a lot of people really want to just deploy all of their project tasks right away and remap those dates and put it all in the system right away. And I want to drive home the importance of having somebody manually look at the resource impact of work. And if all you're trying to do is automate the deployment of a project and assignments and due dates and everything, it sounds great in our heads, but it just doesn't match reality. Like, we need someone to sit there and deploy from a template that's been built to allocate each step of the project, of the process, to an individual person, have a due date on it, have a delivery role identified. So you've got visibility into the impact of that new project on your team's workload. If you're to automate all of that, ClickUp's not smart enough to do like an AI-driven reshuffle of due dates yet based on capacity. I think they'll get there at some point, but right now that's a manual step. So save yourself the hassle of building all this stuff to configure an automated deployment of a project. Just assign that task to the right person and have a human make that judgment call of who's working on this in each of these roles. Obviously, that takes templates. That's what we do here at ZenPilot, is help you develop those processes and workflows. But however you get them in there and use those to manually configure your projects. And it's going to save you time in the long run, because you're not going to need to go in there and fudge around with project timelines that were remapped via template deployment, and get things confusing. So drill into that ROI analysis to make sure you're actually trying to automate something that's realistic and makes sense.
Yep. Those are great edits. All right, we've got a bunch of questions here. One of the questions is, what does it look like? Kind of how does ZenPilot jump in and help with these? And do I have to have this fully defined before working with ZenPilot? So this is like the most self-serving question to answer, but just to be super clear, super common for agencies to come in and say, I've got an idea about what to automate. I'm not 100% convinced that this is the right thing. I think those are probably our favorite clients to work with, where we have a chance to shape, hey, what should actually be happening here. So you can go to zenpilot.com/call, book a time to chat with us. If it's easier to email or message it in, you can message in as well, kind of what you're thinking about, or what's the dream outcome that you want. We're going to get there anyways. What do you want? And then part of our kind of starting point for any of these integrations is going through a discovery project and basically mapping project of, hey, we're going to design exactly what this is going to look like in your use case. And so we'll help you think through it, and we'll help you solve it. And we'll also be open. The reason that we've got kind of a two-step process there of, hey, let's actually get in and we'll do the work on discovery and definition, and then mapping what this is going to look like to build it, is also to go through that ROI case together and say, hey, does this make sense for us to actually get involved in terms of building it or not? So answer that question. Kuba, if you've got some already teed up, I've got some that I'll bookmarked here that I'd like to tee up towards Andrew, but if you have any that you want to jump into first, go ahead and jump in with that. Otherwise, I'm going to jump right into a couple of these.
Hit me.
I think, sorry, Andrew, go.
No, I was going to say, just hit me with your questions if you got them teed up.
Yep. All
okay,
right.
Great. How about you go with your next one, and I'll see which ones I want to float to the top after that.
Perfect. I'm scrolling up and down through this list. right now because I had a couple that I was super excited about. Okay, this is great. Andrew, if you want to kick this one back to me as well, I'm happy to, but do you integrate tasks between HubSpot and ClickUp, or do you transition entirely to ClickUp, leaving behind HubSpot tasks, or what is the recommended approach? I'm specifically meaning roles like account manager, sales reps, and similar positions.
Yeah, it's a great question. I prefer I prefer if you need to factor in resource management as a part of this, then it should live inside of ClickUp. Like HubSpot CRM is great for sales tasks, like quick, fast, actionable things, where the the ClickUp structure is just better for deeper project management with larger time estimates and stuff like that on it. So if I'm looking at someone like an account manager who's going to have a lot of actionable tasks tied to active projects right now, I don't want to force them to go into ClickUp and into HubSpot to look at their task load, because there's going to be a floating area back and forth there. If it's a salesperson who's primarily living in the ClickUp or in the HubSpot area for like working their deals, making their calls, logging their emails, sending their sequences out and stuff like that, tasks make 100% sense over there for them. But my opinion would be if it's anyone client services related, keep those tasks for them inside of ClickUp. And Gray, you can counter that from your growth side if there's any opinions there.
I think it's great. I can go deeper, but are you feeling dangerous or not?
I'm always dangerous, Gray.
All right. Drew has his hand raised, which I absolutely love. And so let's take some live. If folks have live questions, let's hit some of those too. Drew, I just let's see. I gave you the ability to talk if you want to. Would love to hear what your question is, if you meant to have your hand raised, which I'm guessing you did.
I did not actually meant to have my hand raised. I apologize.
All good, all
Your
good.
example right there.
That's cool, man.
That's all right. Well, if anyone else has one, go ahead and jump in. We'll give some deference here to folks who are willing to jump on live. Shruti asks, which third party? Oh, I said it wrong too. Shruti? Very sorry. I'm sure I'm not getting the name correct. Which third party automation tool works the best with ClickUp? As mentioned, there were some limitations. Zapier, we've experienced it too.
Yeah. Make.com, we recommend that one. It's a little bit steeper of a learning curve than Zapier is, but it's definitely more powerful, and the capabilities are a lot stronger coming out of Make than they are coming out of Zapier. There are some things, I'm blanking on what it is off the top of my head. There's some things that you can action inside of Zapier that you can't action inside of Make, where sometimes that tool does make sense. But when you get into that property mapping, like I'll walk through, that's the secret sauce for making two tools like HubSpot and ClickUp really talk to each other and share information back and forth. So that's where Make's going to shine.
Yep. I'll take this next one, and then I'm going to toss you two from Andrew. But from the same person, creative agency, should they have CRM software and PM software? Because at my agency, we have a simple CRM setup in ClickUp itself. Totally fine to run in ClickUp if you have not yet seen what's out from Hop Online, who's a client as well, around how they run in ClickUp. That's a great resource to check out. I will say a lot of this is about volume. You know, if you look at a CRM and you think about relationships or the object types, right? You've got contacts, you got companies, and you got deals. Those are the three main object types in any CRM. You can build all that in ClickUp. That works totally fine to build it. There's no automation of the relationships between those three, so they're not automatically tied together. And so if you're dealing with like 5 contacts a week, no big deal to go automatically click or to go manually click and integrate those together. But when you start doing, 80, 90, 100 contacts a week, that gets awfully annoying. You're paying somebody, and you probably ought to just have a regular CRM. And that's not the only reason to use another CRM, but I think you'll probably hit a phase where you graduate to using a purpose-built CRM, or ClickUp just dominates that market too here at some point. Okay, 2 questions for you, Andrew. From a bit of research I've seen you always use Make. How important do you find the software to your use cases? Have you found any other third-party solutions that improve integration? Is there anything you'd point to other than Make or Zapier? And then the second question is the bigger one.
No, not at this point. We've done some preliminary testing and some other tools, but Make has serviced our use cases pretty well. So we've been happy there.
Okay, you ready for a tougher one?
Yeah.
How do you approach, so this is like, hey, HubSpot and ClickUp API are real accessible, but there's some limitations such as Teams, which require custom API calls in Make. how do you approach user management in ClickUp, like service teams, task visibility, and ClickUp teams function as a whole? Have you found any good use cases for internal team management? And we've got some good answers here.
That's awesome. So internal team management, it all goes back to that process piece of what are you trying to accomplish here. So in ClickUp, on the teams feature, we will build out teams in there, but we won't assign tasks to teams. We'll often use that for like the @mention notifications to go out to everybody. Once you start assigning people there, it kind of blows up people's notifications and hurts them a lot on that side of things. So if you build a team inside of ClickUp and you put all of your account managers on a team, and then you can just go into a doc, you can go into a task, you can go in anywhere and just do @account managers, and they're all going to get a notification about that in that document or whatever it is. That's a great use for that. It's also great for permissions. If you want to make sure if you got a special area set up for account managers, you don't want anyone else to see that, you can just search account managers in there. Just make sure you've got a process for when you hire a new team member on that team, they're getting added to that team. And we use that in Slack too. We've got a @delivery, @growth handle set up in Slack so that we can quickly talk to everybody on those teams there. And part of our new team member onboarding process is making sure they're enrolled in those teams in those different areas. Something else that we do inside of ClickUp is we use drop-down custom fields for account managers. So if you are an account manager for a client at the contract level, so we'll have a client folder and a list per contract. Whoever's the account manager for a specific contract will set an automation that if any task is added into that contract list, the custom field value of account managers is going to be automatically set to Maggie, or automatically set to Hannah or Andrew, whoever's owning that specific client. So from a team management perspective, that helps us analyze the tasks that are overseen by somebody or someone who's ultimately responsible for making sure that work's delivered to the client, but they're not assigned to the task. That drop-down custom field is a great way to help us do that in that area.
Well, yeah, you started to get to where I was going to go to, which is where you've got some of the native API limitations, building a team directory and using custom fields for who's who, and then being able to match up team members to a team via the API will solve that problem.
I had one more.
Yep.
One more real quick. In templates, I mentioned using delivery roles. So when you build a template for a process, you don't want to assign that to a person, because if I've got 5 designers on my team, I don't know which designer is going to do this. I just know the designer needs to complete the task and the art director has to review the task. You can have a delivery role custom field as a drop-down option, and then another custom field called team or department, and you can have all of your different teams laid out in there next to them. So you'll see here, all of our roles are color coded by what team they're associated with, and we've got the team on the right-hand side there. But we go through the individual delivery roles inside of that, and so it's kind of using colors to communicate in ClickUp, which we're huge on. We just have 2 custom fields, team and role. All of the roles that relate to the growth team, they're in green. All the roles that relate to the paid media team, they're in purple. So that helps us manage our effort as we're planning stuff out. And then if I pull up a new project, I can say, hey, show me all of the tasks that are assigned to a strategist, and assign all 75 of those tasks to one person straight away. When I'm the delivery, or if I'm the director of client services or the project manager who's leading that project, I can pull those up in this assignee view here and bulk assign those to the right person. But I can also use these in different workload management view configurations. If I'm the head of the account management team, as an example, I can load up and see the effort that my team is responsible for, and I can see what effort is unassigned at any point. And I can look at dashboards that help lay that out too. So having those custom fields set on your templates is a really powerful tool for quickly assigning that work out, and then also monitoring the workload once you're live.
Awesome. Kuba, I've got a couple extra minutes to stay on and answer questions. We've got a bunch still to get through, but I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. Is there anywhere you want to point folks here before we keep rolling through some of these questions for folks who can stay on?
Yeah, I did want to mention, and I was about to drop in the chat as well. First of all, folks, if you're keen on getting some custom support for your specific use case, blueprint and design for your perfect ClickUp setup or ClickUp HubSpot setup, then go to zenpilot.com/call. But as content marketing manager, I would be remiss not to mention this is far from the only event we're running this month. Next week, we're running 2 live streams, and I just wanted to point you to that. If you look up ZenPilot on LinkedIn, we've got 2 LinkedIn live streams coming up. One is going to be on Tuesday with our very own Derek Harvey on how and why project management migrations fail and what you can do to protect yourself from that. And the next one on Wednesday, Andrew, I hope you marked your calendar already, because that's what it's going to be with Andrew. Very exciting about how to fix the problem of reporting on profitability and utilization with ClickUp and on top of ClickUp. If you liked that brief view that Gray showed with all the numbers about utilization and profitability, then my session with Andrew, that live stream is going to go way deeper into the reporting there, so you can identify which service lines are making you the most money and which ones might be costing you money. Same for clients, which team members are delivering in a big way, and which ones you need to talk with about time tracking, for example. All of that is possible. You can make it visible with ClickUp and with our solution there, and Andrew will be talking about that, and there will be a live demo associated with that. So I wanted to drop that in. I'll drop the links to that in the chat in a sec. But if you're willing to stay a few more minutes, then yeah, by all means, let's keep delivering the goods until the very end here.
Awesome. All right, I'm just scrolling through for who's still on. Anne has a question here. In this mix and match process, I'm not the fastest at. John asked, and is still on, we find it really difficult to get clients to use ClickUp for collaboration within shared folders or lists. Any tips to help this, Andrew?
Yeah, this is
Andrew. Sorry, that was not John.
It's a big one. The clients that we've seen be most successful at bringing their clients into ClickUp are those that treat it really seriously, and they don't treat it as like, hey, here's an option for you. They treat it as like, if you want to talk to us, this is how you talk to us. So they embed education and their proven process into their onboarding experience for clients. So laying out, if it's YouTube videos, if it's walkthroughs on live calls, here's how you access the tool. Helping them configure their notifications is really important too, so that they don't get overwhelmed by those notifications. And then giving them like a ClickUp doc is a great tool to host this in, but give them a one-pager that they can bookmark, because they don't live in the system. Maybe they want to deliver, let's say it's QA for a specific website. You can send them a task, and in there can be a link to show them like how you want them to give their feedback. So just create a ClickUp doc. It could be a public URL, have some YouTube videos in there, Loom videos walking through what you need them to do. But keep your shared space really clean and really simple, and give them clear instructions on how to use it. Would be the two that I would share there.
Yeah, that's great. I think defining, I just pulled up an example of like what a public one would look like here. We don't have any work stuff in here, so that would make it look a little bit cooler. But you're probably 4 main configurations of how to set it up with clients. And the biggest thing is getting them into the habit and understanding what will you actually expect. And it's not just expect, what you actually hold them accountable to. Clients love, like the cool thing about running a client services-based business is you get to make all the rules. Like all the rules are made up and you get to be in charge. So you decide how much you want them, and you deciding that means you're also making a commitment to hold them accountable to whatever. So if you're going to say, hey, working with us means you have to work inside ClickUp and you have to do X, Y, and Z and the other thing, that's fine, but you got to hold people accountable to it. And so your setup needs to be also the right setup. And so if you need help building that setup or knowing how to train your clients, we have done that with thousands of teams before. We can lead you through that. But the big thing is you got to, whatever you set as the expectation, you got to be willing to hold people accountable to.
Absolutely.
All right. That's a great question. Minor question. Do you consider keeping client notes in ClickUp as a best practice or in your company's intranet?
We recommend keep them in ClickUp, single point of truth for all client service related items. So we'll typically have a client doc in ClickUp at the folder level, or as just a doc in the sidebar within that folder, where all the client notes are going to live. And again, that's post sale. So deal notes will stay in HubSpot, or wherever that sales CRM is. And then anything post kickoff, the handoff notes to how you're servicing stuff, all that lives in one document So we don't do it contract specifically. We would do it cross contract so that there's one single doc with nested subpages that has all the information about a client that you would need to know. So that's really helpful when, if you've got like micro projects that you work through with a client, or they're coming back to you multiple times, you don't need to go and unarchive an old contract list. You just go to one client doc at the folder level, and your team can get up to speed really quick on what did you talk about last time. All that stuff's in one spot. We keep that internally facing. We don't often share that out with the client, because you can link tasks and comment and stuff like that in there. But definitely keep it in ClickUp. It can just help your team stay in one spot and not have to branch out too much.
Awesome. All right. We've got just a couple more here. Liv has a great question. Liv, let me make sure you're still on. I'm going to actually allow you to talk as well if you want to, but I'll read this out. Currently using a ClickUp Space as a company intranet, including a folder with directories for our clients, partners, and vendors. We're hoping that there's an integration automation that will create and update tasks for clients, partners, and vendors. Andrew, is there enough there to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I can walk through it at a high level. We can, if you're creating that task needs to come from a single point of truth. So wherever the information lives natively, if that's in HubSpot or if it's in, I'm not sure if there's another vendor list you'd be using for that. You just need that unique property. So for us, it's that HubSpot deal ID that designates that client. That client that lives as a task in ClickUp, we've got to associate that with the original record, so that we can listen for when those updates need to happen.
Okay. I think I'm following you, Andrew, and thank you so much, Gray, for giving me the mic. And that's exactly what I was thinking. Because right now I've got all of our active clients. So obviously those are deals that have closed from HubSpot. And basically how we're managing at the moment is the deal closes in HubSpot. The sales manager lets someone know in a Zoom channel, hey, this deal has closed. And basically that message is my trigger to, okay, let's set them up with a template, new client folder template, doing exactly what y'all are doing. So if I want to update existing tasks, I would just need to make sure that that custom field in ClickUp for the HubSpot custom ID is there. I copy and paste that in. And then once the integration is placed, they should speak on the back end so that that will continue to update. So if I had a new deal for that client, it would associate it with that client and update it. I'm hoping.
You would just need
Sounds
to make
like
sure
it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible with Make. It's not possible with ClickUp because
yes,
ClickUp's going to be a trigger-based automation where Make you can just run scheduled, or you can run it at any point to say, hey, search all tasks. After you make you paste in all those values, you can then run a scenario and execute your workflow that way. But you're over the target already.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Great question.
All right. Let's see. Ron asked, very much interested if HubSpot Service Hub can be connected to ClickUp in a way that incoming questions and tasks from customers can come in through HubSpot and can be managed and assigned in ClickUp seamlessly.
I'm smiling because this is what I want to run a whole webinar on. I've not built it yet, but I really want to. So we don't have a Services Hub license right now, but I'd love to test that out and get more answers for people, because I think that's just a huge use case. And typically, I've talked with people about Zendesk workflows like this, where not every ticket needs a task. I might have if my service rep determines, okay, this needs to go in for QA. Maybe there's a custom field value, or there's something on that conversation that I want to trigger a task in my PM system. And I imagine it'd be the same for the HubSpot flow. I just haven't built it yet, or haven't worked with a team that's built it yet.
Awesome. We got a couple others here. Andrew just asked, do you find ClickUp's 3.0 custom task types useful or a gimmick? You can see the visual use, but they can so easily be closed. Fixable by show closed.
Yeah, gimmick's strong, but I'd lean, if it was a binary choice, I'd go to the gimmick route right now. It has
I'll
promise.
fight you on this. This is great.
It has promise, but it's not fully baked yet.
Yeah, 100%. They get why we need these, and they've seen our use case and how we do task types as custom fields and what we're driving off of it. So yeah. It's just a very their approach has always been, hey, we'll put it out there and we'll see what use is like, and then we'll keep developing it or we'll kill it. if it's not useful for folks or if it's too confusing for folks. So I think this is one that's actually going to be super useful. And they're working actively on the, it's not available via API yet. So that's obviously huge limitation. Number one, but yeah,
I believe it's going to be cool.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, keep it as a drop-down custom field value.
You can't say we agree. We're just on different timelines. This has to be like, no, definitely. No,
you jumped up, man. You're ready to swing. That chainsaw's got to
I'm ready to
go.
Okay. For agencies specializing in consultancy-based projects with customers, what key features of ClickUp should an agency utilize? I can't help when I see the British version with the S instead of the Z. I have to say differently. In conjunction with the HubSpot CRM.
Just circle back to the hammering of templates that we did earlier. You're running a consultancy, which means that like the deliverables are going to be unique to each client scenario, but there's inherent processes to how you want to run that consultancy. Are you meeting with them weekly? Are you meeting with them monthly? Are you doing reporting as a part of that? I'd look at your workflow and identify what are the repeatable components, and build those out as task templates, list templates, folder templates inside of ClickUp, and activate those off of triggers that come from your sales process in HubSpot. So I just kind of have that visual in your mind, go back through the recording, even if you want to, and move through that, to get your questions, to see it live that way.
Yep. That's awesome. I think we made it through all the ones that we didn't answer in the chat. So, and I've got to jump here in 5 minutes. I'm systematically going through and allowing people to talk. If anybody has questions for 5 minutes, happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll wrap here.
Awesome. Anyone have a live
so everyone
question?
on the call can now speak. So if
This
you've got a
chaos.
question, you've got a chance to, so free for all. Come in with your questions if you got them.
Oh, Andrew, go.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah,
We got you.
Yep.
So we've been running through your Zenpalette onboarding documents. When it comes to service tasks, you have two systems. You have one where you have a master task and separate subtasks, and you have recurring values for that. And would you rather do that or have separate master tasks level? And what we mean by that, we're thinking about recurring values, because when you have a master task, you have subtasks and recurring. It says, do you want to close them all? It can sometimes set them to like December 2024. That's the kind of thing that we're worried about. What's your best example for that?
Yeah, we still like the subtasks in there most of the time. The biggest limitation of subtasks right now is future workload implications and impact. But if you have subtasks in place, like the remapping tool is really, really nice on the date side of things. So there's different workflows where we'll use both breakdowns. 90% of the time, I'd say we've got a parent task and subtasks. And Gray talked about earlier the task type native ClickUp feature that just rolled out. We have a task type drop down custom field where one of the option is non-actionable task, and then we have actionable task as another option in there. And so we would set that parent task as non-actionable, and the subtask would be actionable task. That means it needs to show up on someone's to-do list. That parent task doesn't need to be on anybody's to-do list because it's just that noun that groups those verbs together. All those subtasks should be actionable things with an action verb at the beginning: complete, run, schedule, review, draft. Those are the first words of all those subtasks, because that's going to show up on an individual's to-do list. We want to be able to segment those two things apart. And if you have everything in there as actionable tasks with no subtasks, you lose that layer of visibility into either the phase or the deliverable. What groups this effort together in a way that makes sense. So that's how we approach that, Andrew.
Thanks for that question, and thanks for the comment in the chat. Glad you found it useful.
Andrew, are you saying, because I can't remember if this got released or hasn't gotten released yet, you can see future recurring tasks in workload, but you can't see future subtasks of those recurring tasks, even when you have roll-ups on?
Correct. Yeah, because they don't exist yet. The subtasks don't get created until the parent recurs. So it's a black hole.
Makes sense. I think that brings up how do you do workload allocation? So if you're using this level of granularity, the workload view, to do your workload management over a much longer period of time, that becomes a bigger deal. The reality is most agencies are not going to do that. And you're going to use an abstraction of this, which is like what clients are coming in, or even in some cases, a separate planning workspace to be able to get to that same level of granularity. Great call.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that is just your deliverables are created. They're not recurring. So if you're in a retainer situation where you do 4 blogs a month, you're going to deploy 4 task templates and put the unique name of each of those 4 blogs as the parent task name, rather than having one task that recurs every week.
Yep. Perfect. All right. Kuba, take us home. Let's wrap here.
Yeah, great. You compare this to a classroom session before. I feel like the group we've got here is like the people who stayed after the bell, to talk with the teachers one-on-one. So to all of y'all, thank you for staying longer with us. And yeah, we'll be wrapping up here, but definitely stay in touch with ZenPilot as a whole. We're on LinkedIn, publishing a lot. We're on YouTube, publishing a lot. When you go to our site, under resources, you can find First Class Operations, which is the newsletter that I send every 2 weeks or so. And you'll get appraised of our latest content there, upcoming events, live streams, replays of our events. It'll all be there. So that's a good thing to follow. All right, Gray, Andrew, thank you so much, especially for staying longer and answering more of these questions. We got through all of them, so that's awesome. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending once again. Yeah. Everybody, have a nice day.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye all.
Yeah.